Hi, everyone that just joined. Welcome to the Fusion Let's Talk.
See people? I don't. Oh.
Love it. Everyone's on time. Stop. Hi, Dan. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Good, thank you. Nice to see you. Hi, Marianne.
Andy, are we supposed to see everybody or no?
I'm
Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. I know who you are.
Okay.
No, not necessarily, because it's going to be big and bright so everybody can see and follow along.
Okay.
But if you have questions, feel free to message me privately or
Okay.
any info after. I'm going to give this information out in just a second when I let everybody in, when
Okay.
Mel and I do an introduction. But yeah, I think it's also up to you if you see everyone on your side.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for being on time. There's so many of you. There's familiar faces to me, others that are new. Welcome to our families. This is exciting.
No.
We still have some folks joining us. This is great. Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Do you want to come up? Feel free to get warmed up. Show your dance moves if you can hear my music. Hi, Sarah. Okay, I'm just gonna give people a few more minutes.
Hi, Mel. It's Beth Greenwood. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see you. And it's great to see all the wonderful faces. As Andy was saying, all the welcoming many folks who we know and some new faces we're seeing as well, and lots of parents who are joining us.
Okay. Okay. I will go ahead and let people in as they come, but I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. So just a small introduction. I am Andy Tesoro. I am the Director of Outreach for Fusion Academy Warner Center. So on our line, we've invited everybody just to have this talk with Empowered Learning because we thought that it was beneficial for anybody pretty much that's dealing with students and families and trying to support them. And we want to keep our families engaged and know that we hear you. I see Sarah is on the line, our campus director, our head of school, Mel is on the line, and we wanted to bring a presentation to our community in partnership with Empowered because they truly do the work that empowers students and families, but gives them the tools. And then they also just align with us with working with students individually and really concentrating on the social emotional piece as well within the learning skills and the executive functioning and all that great stuff. So that's why we partnered with them and came up with the best and most hopefully fruitful presentation to give to you guys. And yeah, that's my piece. I'm really excited about this. They've worked really hard with us. So it'll be great. And this is going to be recorded, so if you want a copy of it, I'll send it out. Please save your questions. There's going to be a time in the presentation that we have takeaways, and it'll be a pause for questions that we might have, but just for time purposes as well. You can send me a private message, and I'll compile the questions for Peggy and Nicole. And at the end, there's also going to be a link for information that you can gather from them to contact you right away, and you can fill that out for informational and follow up with them specifically. Mel, Sarah, do you guys want to just say hello?
I just want to thank, first and foremost, before we get started, Nicole and Peggy for putting this presentation together, and again, for everybody else taking the time out to join us today. It's really exciting when we join forces and are able to connect with not only our incredible resources that we have in our community with our professionals, but also with our families as well.
Yes, I so appreciate getting together and having this collaborative opportunity, and I'm so happy that I see some familiar names on this call from some of our parents. So I'm really excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, Peggy, take it away.
Hey.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Andy for working with us on this. It has been a pleasure. Andy, we were talking about how we're going to miss our weekly meetings. And I also want to thank Sarah and Mel for inviting us to do this. We do love doing this. Anyhow, hi, I am Nicole. And I started as an ed therapist because school was really a struggle for me. And I had to naturally learn to compensate for my own deficits. And it was more difficult than the average person. And I didn't understand that my inability to perform had nothing to do with my cognitive ability. And after doing some research, I realized that the compensation strategies that I created for myself are things that are actually taught to people. And I didn't have that opportunity, and I didn't know that. And so I sort of become my mission for no student or anybody to feel stupid growing up because their inability to perform has nothing to do with their cognitive ability. So in addition to my own struggles, I have 3 children who all learn differently and have attention issues. So I have that perspective as well. As a result of that, I wanted to create a one-stop shop and Empowered is a place where parents can come, and whether or not I have someone that is able to work with them, although we have a lot of services, I will help guide into what direction sounds best for the kids. And I do it from the perspective as an ed therapist and as a parent. I have the quote on here, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And I this is my favorite quote. I do get chills every time I read it. It's on my email tag or my signature. And I want everyone to be able to show what they've got and not just in one way. And that's sort of the basis of everything I do. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague. Peggy and I have worked together over 25 years in the LA area. And we've recently expanded. I have moved to Mexico and Peggy has moved to Tennessee. So we are all over. Go ahead, Peggy.
Great. Hi, I'm Peggy Oram. I've been working, as Nicole said, as an ed therapist since the mid-90s. Sounds like a long time ago. Nicole and I started out in the field together, so we were trained together. We share a lot of the same basic philosophy. It's great to be collaborating with her again. We've both worked with the issues in this presentation for many years with our own students, and we have a personal connection to the material as well as parents. As she said, her own kids with their issues. And I have a son on the spectrum who's now a young adult. So all these things came up over the years through elementary, middle, and high school. So what we hope to do is go over how to recognize some issues, offer solutions, and our goal is to look at them from multiple angles because we all know one size doesn't fit all with our kids. So we're excited to share our knowledge and experience with you and hope you find this information useful as well. Okay. So we're all seeing heightened anxiety, whether it's based on the pandemic or some other personal life challenges. So by working on these basic skills, we're going to look at raising child self-esteem and reducing anxiety. Nicole, do you want to take?
Sure. So perspective is, can you hear me? Okay. Perspective is being able to see and understand someone else's point of view and realizing that there's more than one way to look at things. Flexibility is the ability to consider more than one perspective and in a way to be able to problem solve and have the mental flexibility to change one's behavior. And boundaries, using this knowledge to respect the mental and physical boundaries and space of others and while protecting your own. And I think that part is really important to remember. So we want to know how we raise a child's self-esteem. We're going to use those three things: perspective, flexibility, and boundary setting.
Great. Okay, so we're going to look at perspective. I credit Nicole for finding all these great memes that make us really visualize what we're talking about. So this slide says it all. Perspective can vary greatly from person to person. And it's important to recognize our own perspective, but it can be really tricky for some people, a lot of our students, to figure out what someone else's perspective is. So as you can see, there's what the kids thinks they see, what the room really looks like, what they see, what mom sees, and how she describes it. This is a daily thing that I go through. And Nicole had a great point that it's really important for some of our kids that tend to be concrete thinkers to get a visual image of what their perspective is and what the goal is. So we always try to use visualization techniques as much as we can. Okay, so let's dive into perspective. Okay, how can you tell if your child needs help with perspective? The kids tend to be concrete thinkers. They may think in black and white terms. You may see issues with sarcasm, figurative language, more subtle nuances, and misinterpreting jokes can be a big thing. They tend to take things at face level, so it may take them longer to figure out the punchline, things like that. A lot of these kids can be too trusting, which is very endearing, but they can be easily taken advantage of, which can lead to them being, sadly a target for bullying because they're seen as, kind of easy prey if they don't get jokes or their processing speed might be a bit slower. Need things stated directly. That's a big thing, trouble seeing the big picture. Going back to seeing stated directly, you may see things like, one example might be, if you say to someone, are you going to finish that piece of pie? We understand that, oh, I think they have their eye on my pie. Like, no, I'm finished, you can have it. Versus actually stating, can I have the rest of your pie? So those little subtleties can go undetected. with some of these people, trouble seeing the big picture or the gestalt. And it really affects comprehension. So always be on the lookout for like reading comprehension. We may always just focus on social, but that really bleeds into comprehension of stories, especially the more subtle things like inferences, drawing conclusions, which requires you to see the big picture. They can have difficulty imagining what characters are thinking, which makes it hard for them to predict what might happen next in the story. And one thing we're gonna touch on is group work, which isn't always talked about. But group work involves reading several people at once, as well as a lot of attention and EF things, remembering directions. There's a lot of moving parts. So we're gonna address that in a later slide. Okay, what is a perspective detective? This is a great term to describe how we read a situation and then make choices about what to do. So we'll go through the steps first. Okay, first you gather information. We look at verbal cues and nonverbal cues, body language, what is the person saying? And then we make a guess based on our observations. What could that person be thinking or feeling? And then the last thing we do is predict what that person might be thinking and what they might do and make a good social decision based on that. Now, these steps sound very simple and most of us do this without thinking, but some of our kids really struggle in this area. So it's really helpful to outline the steps for them in clear terms so they can be aware of what they should be looking for. And this can be especially important in situations where they might be nervous or in a new environment. And another thing to remember is our students have to practice interpreting multiple streams of information and making sense of it all at once. And this is visual, verbal, emotional. And that's a lot to process for these kids. Think of it as like having bandwidth on a computer. When we have a lot of windows open at once, our processing speed slows way down. So give these guys extra time to process information as they're learning and strengthening this skill. Okay, so these are questions that they're going to think about. What do I already know about the person or situation? This involves thinking about the background information, what you already know, or the history of the person. You know, like, what do I already know about that person, their likes and dislikes? What do I know about what's happened to them? What does their body language tell me? That's when you're physically in the same room. What does their tone of voice tell me? What other clues are there? You know, facial expressions, things like that. Are there other people in the room? And then we start to get into perspective. What might that person be thinking and feeling based on all these observations I made? And again, we do this automatically, but these are things that a lot of our kids may not think to bring into the picture. And then we want them to think about what are at least 2 or more possibilities for what might be happening or what might that person do. Okay, and which possibly is most likely. And this can be something as easy as, I want to go up and talk to my friend, but they look like they're upset. You know, they have their head down, their voice sounds upset. Is this a good time to approach them? Or is this a good time to approach that teacher with a question? Things like that. Okay, and here we get into group work. And I wanted to bring this up because this isn't often addressed. So working in a group can be very challenging for our students that have trouble with perspective. A lot of the things we hear is that, you know, other students in the group might think that person's lazy, or the teacher may see them as lazy. They may think that they just have issues focusing or paying attention, or that they just don't get the material. Some of that can be true. It could be an attention issue. It could be that they have trouble with material, but we should always consider the social issue relating to perspective and other executive functioning issues. So here's some of the things is they don't know the group plan. So they completely don't see the big picture. I don't know what we're doing. You know, why are we all working together? Okay, the other part, which is a more social thing, is I know the group plan, but I don't know how to get myself started or involved in it, and I don't know what questions to ask. Saw a lot of that with my son. He'd bring stuff home, and I'm like, well, what is your job in this group? He goes like, well, I don't know. I'm just supposed to do this. I'm like, well, what's, you know, he didn't have any information about, and he kind of got sidelined. because he probably came off as a little bit clueless about how to work himself into the group. And another option is they know the group plan, but they want to follow their own plan. And that comes into maybe not knowing how to effectively work in a group, or not having the mental flexibility, which we're going to get into in the next section. Okay. Okay, so here's some ways to practice perspective. We do this a lot in our house. We will stop while we're watching a movie, especially with watching movies, to check for comprehension. And you might be surprised at how much or how little your child is following along. Can they retell the plot so far? Can they remember what choices the characters made and why? And what was the effect of these choices? This all takes a lot of social processing and observation. So it's kind of good. I don't want, you don't want to make them feel like you're testing them, but sometimes I'll just pause it and go, I was kind of spacing out there for a minute, or I went to get some water. Like, can you catch me up? So it's kind of a low pressure way to get them to practice reviewing what's gone on so far. Just in daily life, you can encourage them to consider different ways to view situations, different viewpoints. How might someone's background affect the viewpoints that they have? And have them practice being curious about someone's words or actions instead of taking them personally. If maybe something rubs them the wrong way, maybe consider the other person's viewpoint. What are some possible explanations for why they might have said that? And then in their own conversations with people, you can give them some language to be curious about other people's point of view. Like, why do you think that? Can you explain more about that? And they can be, taught how to comment, even if they don't agree with someone. A lot of our concrete thinkers don't mind telling people that. But maybe teach a little bit of tolerant language, like, I can see your point, or that's interesting, and being able to have the flexibility to take it in and be okay with it, even if we don't agree with it. Okay, and here's just a quick summary of perspective. And I think this is where Andy was going to bring up a question.
Yeah, we don't have any questions yet given to me privately, but we can open the floor to a question if any parents or professionals have any. Anyone?
Yeah. Should we move on?
Yeah, we can. Sure.
Okay. All right. And
so flexible thinking, another important skill, and these always make me chuckle. I happen to be a pretty literal person and have to ask myself, is that what this person really meant? And this also reminds me, the first meme with the cute little woman on there. My daughter was in middle school, and the teacher asked her to do something, and she wasn't understanding what he was saying. And he goes, well, you have a real chip on your shoulder. And she literally looks at her shoulder and is like, I don't have a chip there. And he actually sent her to the office because he said she was being sassy. And I had to intervene and explain to him that my daughter is a very literal person and doesn't understand idioms like other people do. And so he actually apologized to her, which it's important about knowing how your student is. Anyhow, okay. Okay, so what is flexible thinking? What does it really mean? It is an important executive functioning skill. Someone with flexible thinking can successfully manage themselves in an unpredictable world where novelty and change are the norm rather than the exception. So it's being able to go back and forth to something without having anxiety. A lot of stress and anxiety can be reduced by learning flexible thinking skills. Research shows that psychological flexibility is the cornerstone of healthy personal and social functioning. So having the ability to think flexibly allows someone to be able to stay present and in the moment and problem solve when things aren't going necessarily the way that they had envisioned them going. Someone who has flexible thinking skills can smoothly switch gears and adapt to new situations without becoming dysregulated. I remember when my brother was younger and plans changed. Like my parents would change the restaurant we went to or the time we went to, and he would become unglued. He did not have flexible thinking. Um, uh, having this skill, it's one of the 10 executive functioning skills, and having this skill will make it easier for your child to transition and deal with the unexpected. Okay, there are 8 cognitive flexibility skills. Easily transition and shifts from one task to another. And this is how we can gauge where our child is. Sees shades of gray rather than thinking in necessarily in just black and white. Thinks hypothetically and can envision different possibilities. So they're not stuck on one way of doing something. It is being open to the possibility. And as Peggy was talking about in the group activities, being able to collaborate and come up with the most efficient way. Is able to handle change in rules, routines, and original plans, just like I was talking about my brother. Handles unpredictability, ambiguity, uncertainty, and novelty. That is going to involve questioning from the children and our students. And it may often seem a little annoying when students ask or your children ask things over and over and over. What they're trying to do is get a picture in their head of what it's going to look like, because they've already focused in on something that the original plan. And the perfect example that it actually happens to me. And if someone says, okay, we're going to meet at 5:30, and then the plan changes, I've already put in my head that it's 5:30, and I will be ready or meet at 5:30 regardless, even it's just what's ingrained in my head. So having some empathy on this and trying to help them overcome that is the best way to do it. Being able to consider other factors that mean a change in plans. Example, if it rains, we may need to cancel the trip. So it's handling disappointment. There's always going to be some disappointment with goes along with that. Thinks rationally even when frustrated, and that's really hard to do when they're becoming dysregulated and unable to think properly. Avoiding overgeneralizing or personalizing situations. An example of that is, no one likes me, you always blame me, it's not fair, I'm stupid, things will never work out for me. So it's getting rid of words like always and never, and it's having the flexibility of being open to, okay, well, sometimes this doesn't feel fair or whatever, but it's not always. Okay, what does flexible thinking look like? There's self-regulation. Self-regulation is the act of managing thoughts and feelings to be able to organize behavior, control impulses, and solve problems constructively. Self-regulation can be broken down into cognitive, emotional, and behavioral domains. So cognitive self-regulation includes focused attention, executive functioning, goal setting, self-monitoring, problem solving, perspective thinking, and decision making. Emotional self-regulation involves actively managing strong feelings and emotionally arousing situations, as well as expressing emotions effectively in a calm and non-disruptive kind of way. Behavioral self-regulation includes following rules, delaying gratification, persistence, impulse control, conflict resolution, active coping strategies, and goal-oriented behaviors. Adapt when confronted with a change, and adjust to the unexpected. Cognitive flexibility is about quickly adjusting to changes, looking at things differently, and being comfortable exploring new ways of doing things. When we think flexibly, we can easily adjust to new situations and deal with the change in our routine. It's like what we call going with the flow. Generate solutions to problems. To solve problems, one must be able to understand the problem and see it from various perspectives, and open their mind to more than one possible solution, which is difficult. When flexible thinking is applied in problem solving, the mind can quickly change according to the situation. So how can I tell if my child is dysregulated? And what does it look like? So dysregulation is when the nervous system gets hyper aroused and the frontal lobe has trouble doing its job, managing executive functioning skills, including decision making, planning, monitoring emotions, paying attention to, and switching tasks. This is the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation. It is essentially turned off during heightened stress. Here's some examples. We've got the fight, which is stress, crying, and anger. We have flight, where they won't engage, shut down, refuses to communicate, closed off to plans, and freeze, can't think of alternatives, processing speed slows way down. I'm sure all of you have heard the saying, you know, I'm going to flip my lid, or I just flipped my lid. That actually is a term that comes from flexible thinking, because what happens is the frontal lobe of our brain gets fired, and essentially that part, the lid, your head, gets flipped and it shuts down, and causing us to go into either a fight, flight, or freeze mode, because they are not able to, or we, it happens to all of us, are not able to calmly problem solve and figure out the situation. Okay, so how to help my child when they are dysregulated. All right, strategies. Understand it's a common for many teens, and I'm going to add children, to become dysregulated, like younger ones, preteen. Expressing frustration or telling them to calm down will absolutely make it worse. Empathize and express you understand their disappointment and you are here to help. Help them brainstorm other options. Problem solving, get them engaged in some sort of physical movement, and take a break and come back to the conversation later. If they are like wrapped up in it and they keep perseverating around the whole thing, you're not going to get anywhere. So parenting, when you have a child that's dysregulated, parenting looks different. Punishment is not going to work, like calm down, yelling at them. This will never work. Something, for example, that I did with my daughter who would get dysregulated a lot is I would get her in a bear hug, and I would be behind her and I would hold her tightly in the sense like a weighted blanket was probably something that people would do now. They didn't have this when my daughter was younger, but holding on and having her back against my chest and breathing deep and slow, and she starts mimicking my breath, and it will slowly, she'll start copying it, and her nervous system will start to slow down. And that's when you're able to have a conversation about whatever is going on. And I always found that really worked. Okay, how to adapt when confronted with change. That's difficult for some people. Examples of this: friend gets grounded and has to cancel exciting plans. A car is not available and you can't get where you need to go. Parents can't take you to the movies because of work. So what can we do about it? We stay calm. We are being the role models, and we're doing the emotional regulation, and we're going to show them that. Use self-talk strategies. This strategy will help them hear any mistake in their logic and reflect on their ideas. The best way to practice this is at home, is to model for your children. Think about alternatives ahead of time, just in case. So for example, if the car isn't available right then and there, what would be 3 options that we could give them a choice to pick of how they would like to solve that problem? Use visualization techniques to imagine different scenarios. As Peggy was talking about before, it's really important to incorporate as many visualization strategies and when dealing with kids, with anyone, because that's how the kids are going to keep themselves calm and have less anxiety, because they already have a picture in their head of what's going on, so it's not going to feel like a big surprise. Okay, that's okay, totally good.
Yes.
How can you generate solutions to problems? We're going to clearly identify the problem. You're going to brainstorm as many solutions as possible. You're going to think of the pros and cons for each solution. You can also put it in writing. You're going to visualize what each choice may look like by creating a mental picture. Again, more visualization, and create a plan to move forward. So these strategies are no-brainers for a lot of us. Kids that are dysregulated will be stuck and will not remember these steps. So you can create a note card with these steps and put it in their binder or pin it up in their room. And actually, we're gonna, if you want, as Andy was saying, we're gonna have some PDFs and things like this that we can send you as really good reminders. Okay, helpful tips when helping your teens problem solve. So the key is to make sure that we're helping them problem solve. We're not problem solving for them. So ask them what they know about the situation and start them there. Tell me what you know and think about this. Problem solve from their perspective. How do you see this situation? Ask them what their ideas are first before offering yours. What ideas do you have that might work? And I want to add on here, sometimes the kids will not be able to verbally express themselves. So what I do when I'm in that situation, either with one of my children or with a client of mine, I will give them, well, you could do this, 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 and this, or 3 options. And I always, throw in there one that is kind of ridiculous, that is not a good idea, and one that's a great idea, and then I kind of make up something in between. So at least they are thinking about and identifying with one of the things that is probably the best way to problem solve, and then slowly start converting and giving solutions to having them come up with solutions. And it's really important to say, how can I help support you with this? Not like, or something like, what do you need from me? So those are important things to remember. And the takeaways. Are there any questions?
There was one in the chat, Nicole. Let me see. I think Lilia. She said, "You are describing my child perfectly, but what do I do about it?" There's also. Go ahead.
Okay, what? No, I was going to say, in which part, like the flipping out or the dysregulation? She can text.
Hi.
I think
okay.
she's on the line.
Perfect.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, totally.
Nicole, this is Luca's mom, Lila.
Oh,
hi.
Hi.
I feel like you're talking about Luca, which is kind of crazy. But
right.
How do I, as a parent, remember all this? I mean, there's so many things I'm doing wrong from just watching the first half an hour. How do we, I'm not a therapist. So how,
Listen, even as a parent, me learning to do this was totally counterintuitive. And the way that I parent, I have twin girls, right? And you think that you would parent the same. You don't. I had the parenting one and parenting the other, like one would totally backfire. So, and I'm more than happy to talk about this with you separately as well, but I think it'll help other people. Look at the situation. I would imagine for Luca, when he becomes dysregulated, that a bear hug and getting him to calm his breathing down
absolutely
will really help. As far as you remembering these things, tell us you want the PDFs and we'll send them. And just the more you start, I think it's about also pressing the pause button and not overreacting or reacting very quickly. Like I know for a long time when I used to punish my children, I would do it very quickly and then go, God, that was not the smartest thing to do. And I started saying, what you did was inappropriate, or I'm not okay with, it doesn't align with how we are in this family. And I'm going to take some time to think about how we're going to deal with this. And it's okay to slow down, because I found that I needed that for myself, because it didn't always, even though I do what I do and I can do it with my students and I can talk to all the parents that I work with, it's still hard when you're doing it yourself. So that's normal. And so it's just like, take one thing at a time, try one thing and then add another and then add another.
And
yeah.
The perspective part, like, does your child need help with perspective? I never realized that he does all those things because he needs help with perspective.
Right. So we will, excuse me, what we're going to do is we're going to show different perspectives of things. Okay. And you're going to say, okay, that's one way to see it. Here's another way to see it. I always take like a apple or an orange and be like, what is this? An apple. Okay, great. It is an apple. And then show them the top part. That's a different perspective of it. And then the bottom part, and then the side. So yeah, that is an apple, but there's different ways to look at it. And so that's something tangible. You could do it with a toy or whatever of his, and move forward from there. So,
Okay.
and then start translating that idea into different things, even when it's not an issue. That's when I would do it. The best way to teach anything is when they're calm and they're not dysregulated. So in an any day situation, to be able to say, oh yeah, you saw it that way. You know what's funny is I see it this way, and they're both right.
Mhm.
Can you teach that? Like, can you teach, like Luca's the kind of kid, if you said, you sound like you have a chip on your shoulder, he would really look and think he has a chip on his shoulder.
That's
Is
like
that-
my daughter.
Can you
Yeah, I mean, something I always recommend is there's a great book of idioms. It's on my site. I can send you the link later. And I think at dinner, it's kind of fun to talk about them because they're funny, and it talks about like where they come from and all this stuff. And so it starts to teach them. And, my daughter, although she's at Berkeley, obviously super smart, she still doesn't totally get sarcasm.
Yeah, neither-
And then when she's sarcastic, it's kind of funny because I don't realize it. I think she's being serious.
Nicole, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lila.
No, I just said thank you. That all helps. Thank
You're welcome.
There was another question that came in from Jennifer. It's great. Curious about the distinction between flexible cognitive thinking and establishing and maintaining boundaries. And I know we talked about this with planning, the boundaries piece that is really missing.
Right.
That's coming up.
Yeah, that's coming up. So let's hold that
Okay.
question
Perfect.
until the end. Okay, is that fine?
Should we go
Yeah.
through that and see if it doesn't get answered, we can.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're good?
Okay.
Okay, again, Nicole found all these great pictures. This was chosen for its cute factor. And, physical boundaries are easy. That's the easy part. We all know, like, don't be a space invader, get out of my face, all that stuff. So we'll look at those, but also the mental and emotional part too. Okay, so what are boundaries? Just an overview. Boundaries are invisible, which make them very hard for our kids. Let me get this view off here. Boundaries tell us where we can and cannot go without permission. They can be physical, personal space, again, which are very easy and concrete to see. Mental, emotional, how we affect others' thoughts and feelings and how they affect ours. And it's important for both parties. We need to respect the boundaries of others as well as learn how to maintain our own. And that can, again, as we talked about earlier, for the concrete thinkers that take things literally, that can be difficult. Okay, how are physical boundaries crossed? Again, body space, standing too close to other people, being in their face. This also can be a voice volume thing. We're still working on that in our family with my son. It's like, I can hear you. You're standing right next to me. Volume, please. Touching people in their things without asking permission. That's an obvious one. This is one, staring too long. This is kind of the stalker. The stalker, you don't want to be a stalker. Looking versus staring. When we stare at someone too long, they can feel that that's crossing a physical boundary for them. And body position, facing away from people when they're talking. We don't think about that as boundaries, but I wanted to include that in there because if someone's talking to you and they're completely, you've got your body turned away, that gives the impression that, what they're saying isn't important to us. And that is a way, physical or mental boundary. So mental and emotional boundaries. Okay, saying whatever comes to mind. So we want to encourage kids to stop and think. This is an impulse control issue. But try to filter what you say after thinking carefully about, who's your audience. Reacting before you think something through. I want them to press pause. This can be a physical reaction, just acting impulsively. Being unable to contain your emotions or energy. These are like big feelings that may be a little bit, we don't want to discourage people from expressing themselves, but sometimes when they're too big and too explosive, people feel a little impinged upon. An example of this might be texting or calling someone too much, even if they're excited. Not allowing other people to express themselves or express an opinion that's different than ours. and blaming others and having a hard time accepting responsibility for one's actions. This can be sometimes when we make things other people's fault so we don't have to deal with uncomfortable feelings. I think we can all relate to that. You made me do this, or I did this because, you know, rather than sitting with it and looking at the choices that we made. So that can be hard. Boundaries can be clear or fuzzy. Clear boundaries are pretty easy to think of. Don't enter the bedroom without knocking. Don't touch my stuff. If you keep a promise, say you're going to keep a promise, you keep it, and keep your hands to yourself. It was actually easier to think of fuzzy boundaries. So friendly teasing, that's a tough one. When did they mean it? Did they not mean it? How much teasing is too much? Was that mean or nice? How well do you know that person? A friend that asks for too much help on schoolwork, they can start to feel, you know, taken advantage of. One friend wants to spend way too much time together. Maybe they can make your child feel guilty about not doing everything with them. Keeping secrets that might not be safe. This kind of goes along with that. A friend is doing things they aren't supposed to do and they feel uncomfortable. Should they say something? Should they not? Your friend always decides what the plans are. We've all had friends like that, but you know, it's this is a self-advocacy issue, learning how to stand up for oneself. Okay, so here's some good language. We thought we'd include this because it's good to practice with your child so that they're comfortable saying these things. Because, you know, they probably get nervous when they feel a little bit of peer pressure or in a higher anxiety situation. Since you chose where we got the food last time, I'd love to choose the place. I can talk for about 20 minutes, but then I have to get back to my homework. Sometimes I get behind on responding to texts, so don't take it personally. I'll respond as soon as I can. I'm excited to spend time with you, but right now I need more time alone to recharge. I feel too upset to talk about this right now. I'd really appreciate it if you came back to it later. I'm happy to help you from time to time with your homework, but it's not something I can do every day. So I like how they, it's not like they're giving an excuse, but they give an explanation, which is courteous, but they're also firm in their response. They're not asking permission. They're just very gently saying, this is what I need for myself. Okay, how to respect others' boundaries. So we want to teach them to think about their comments in advance, and this is where perspective comes in. Think about your audience before speaking. Could this make the other person uncomfortable? A lot of times, a lot of our students or kids have to learn who their audience is. Is this joke okay to tell to my friend's parents? Is it okay to tell to a teacher? You know, there's different social settings. Respecting what others want to talk about. So we want to respect the boundaries of others by giving them the space to express themselves, even if it's not interesting. There's a thing called the social fake, which is great. Some of these concrete thinkers need to be taught, like, if you're bored, you're gonna have to fake it for a couple minutes and just be polite. We all know that. Wait for a response before texting or calling again. That can be really hard because they want to get that response. So in the meantime, they can practice thinking of reasons why their friends aren't responding right away. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe they're doing homework. Maybe their parents took away their phone. You know, maybe they're busy and that's okay. So help them, again, with this flexible thinking issue, help them brainstorm reasons that they may not have thought of. Okay, this is one. My daughter does this. Don't correct people in front of others. If it's important, wait until you can talk to the person in private. That takes impulse control, that self-regulation piece. Again, flexible thinking. It's okay to wait. I can wait. I have that choice. And a good kind of concrete rule is manners matter. Like, basic rules can help with some of our black and white thinkers. It just gives them a foundation. Like, I remember one time my son was 10 and we had a wealthy friend. In the span of about 5 minutes, he asked him how much his house cost, was he rich, and how much was in his bank account. So questions we were all dying to ask, and but because he was 10 and a concrete thinker, he got away with it. But something to learn. Okay, what happened there? How are personal boundaries created? We're just going to go with that. Sorry about that. That moved in too soon. Okay, move slowly into friendships. A lot of our kids have big feelings and they meet someone they like, and especially if they're not socially savvy, it's tempting to dive headfirst into a friendship, and that can feel like too much for people. So we want to teach them also, even though they're excited, in terms of your own personal boundaries. Go slow and get to know a person a piece at a time, not all at once. We want to teach them how to respect themselves, even though people may not like everything about you. So it's okay if everyone's not your best friend, and even if some people don't like you, if you know your own qualities and are okay with that. Okay, there we go. Notice when personal boundaries feel invaded. We want to encourage them to trust their gut, especially if they feel like they're being taken advantage of or being treated poorly. Oftentimes they probably are. So we want to help them build those kind of protective mechanisms, not to be too closed off, but be intuitive and be on the lookout for their best interests. Okay, sorry about that text there. Okay, be true to yourself and your values. Try to teach them not to be too influenced just for the sake of being liked. Again, a lot of our kids who maybe struggle with the social area, once they get a taste of a friend or they're included in a friend group, it can be tempting to go all in. So we want to make sure that they are checking in with themselves and that they feel good about it. Okay, every friendship and relationship will be different and have different boundaries. That's a case-by-case basis, but different people are going to have different boundaries, and it depends on a lot of factors: how well you know them, what's your relationship with them, their age, things like that. Okay, we want them to teach how to effectively communicate their needs and their wants. People can't read minds, so we want them to understand that people don't automatically anticipate what you need. So it's important to teach them how to respectfully state what they would like and what they're comfortable with. And also model this at home. This can be hard when we want our child to respond right away. So text me back now. So we have to give them some space. Things about respecting their privacy when appropriate as they get older, not before you enter their bedroom, things like that. And also showing them that we protect our own boundaries. Okay, so here's our takeaway. The different types of boundaries, they can be subtle or fuzzy. Different people have different boundaries, and helping them practice their language skills. I do want to say one more thing. Practicing the language is a big deal because a lot of frustration from our students comes from knowing what they want but not knowing how to say it, and rehearsing these phrases in this language with them in advance can really help reduce their anxiety.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? There's one here we can tackle. What tools can be used to have a student stop and think before they speak, or raising the volume of their voice?
To help lower the volume? You mean to modulate?
Carrie? Yeah.
We just, with the voice, we just give a lot of gentle feedback. In practice, there's a chart we have that we can send along that's basically different voice volumes for different situations. At the top is an emergency, the house is on fire. The bottom is you're in the library. What does that sound like? Medium is maybe in a moderate classroom, something like that, where there's other people. Maybe the second down might be I'm standing right next to someone.
I also, can I jump in with something?
Yes, of course.
I feel like, excuse me, you guys, I'm getting over this cold. I feel like that kids will raise their voices because I think what they're saying is they don't feel like they're being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And any kid with an attention issue, I'll tell you what happens is that they, sorry, let me take a sip. They feel like if they're cutting people off and they're interrupting and they want to get what is out because they know that they believe, and they often are right, that they're going to forget what it is that they want to say.
Yeah.
So I do recommend, and it makes it really difficult to have a conversation sometimes because you want them to actively hear what you're saying and not be thinking about what they want to say on the other end. So there are some tools and strategies for that. When I'm working with students and they want to say something and we're on a Zoom, I always make sure they have a little notebook next to them, like write down your question. We'll get to all of your questions. And I know sometimes that's really difficult in a conversation, but if they're in the classroom, I would recommend doing the same thing for sure.
Mm-hmm. And as far as stopping and thinking, I would say, we literally teach kids stop and think, just stop for a minute before you say anything. And there's a concept called, the brain filter, which we said. So, and it really just takes a lot of practice. I mean, we went through years and years of practicing these skills with our own children. So it's not a quick fix. But once you become aware of it, you can start working on them one at a time. And I think, as Nicole touched on before, the emotional regulation is really the first piece. Because once they're dysregulated, none of these things are going to really come easily. So yeah, I'd say the emotional regulation and that impulse control is the second part.
Okay. I know that we're coming up on time. We have a few slides left. If people have to jump off, completely understand. I am going to put right now the link to the Empowered Learning PDF for information. There's nothing on it, but there you'll put Fusion Talk so they can distinguish that you are on this presentation so they can get back to you right away. I just put it in there. Oh, actually, I sent it to Sarah. Hold on. Let me send it to everyone. There you go. There it is. So before you jump off, make sure to save that so you can get in contact with Peggy and Nicole for any follow-up questions or just information. And then I will be sending out the recording, but we will finish. And if you can stay on, please do so. If not, completely understand.
We'll get through it pretty quickly. I also want to say that when you go into the contact page to ask for it, just make sure in the box that you put what you're looking for. Otherwise, we won't get a message that it's from you. Anyhow, okay, so on to the next thing. We're talking about different types of interventions. This is a graphic that I saw and I had made up because I really thought it was great. And it's all about a process. So engaging where you're at. And this is not just an overall picture, but this could be task specific as well. But let's get into these interventions quickly so we can get to some questions if you guys would like.
We just handpicked a few things that most of them we have personal experience with, but they're things that are sort of teen friendly and really non-invasive and non-threatening. So we just thought we'd throw them out there as kind of out of the box.
So yeah, exactly. So I think we're all pretty aware that there's therapy, and we know MDMR and CBT. Anyhow, so nutrition, a lot of people are looking to nutrition these days and like a holistic nutritionist to talk about what kinds of things we should fuel our body with and what kinds of things to stay away from, and heavy metals and allergy testing. We do happen to have an incredible holistic nutritionist that works with us, and she is phenomenal. Social thinking would be like small groups and to navigate social stuff together and improve performance of things, and they're really problem solving together, and it's really nice to be able to work with peers. Biofeedback measures the activity in your body, while neurofeedback measures the activity in your brain. I can tell you that I personally did biofeedback, and it is kind of, some of these things are controversial, and I know that, but I just wanted to point out, like, it's your decision on what you choose to do. I tried it, and I obviously, well, not obviously, but have ADHD, and I actually did feel my nervous system really slow down with it. It is something you got to keep up and do frequently. Neurofeedback, I have not personally done. they say it helps with improving behavior and control with impulsivity. Mindfulness and meditation, I imagine we're all pretty aware of this. It is proven and is so great for students. I do a lot of it in my practice with students, especially around test anxiety. And I mean, I incorporate the skills a lot, even into social situations when I'm helping my students. Art therapy is a really nice way. It also helps when a child doesn't really want to, if they have a hard time verbally expressing themselves, or if they just don't want to. Equine therapy is, I think it's amazing. I actually just talked to someone in LA that does it, so I have a referral if you guys are interested in that. I had one of my daughters did it when she was, I'm going to say, in 3rd or 4th grade, and it is fantastic, especially for creating empathy and social skills and all. It was a wonderful, beautiful experience that she had. And then there's wilderness therapy, and it's for teens mostly, and they're out on their own, and it's really, you're really retraining. I mean, like all of these, you're retraining the pathways in the brain. And I would say that, wilderness therapy is going to probably combine a lot of that stuff, and it's only for, the right student.
Mm-hmm.
So we are welcome. We can take questions. This is the takeaway from everything altogether about perspective, flexible thinking, cognitive flexibility, boundaries. So these are the 3 areas that are really going to help with reducing anxiety for our kids. And just know that anxiety can be broken down into different parts. Like, is it with the family? Is it with academics? Is it socially? So it's really, really trying to work hard on identifying where those breakdowns are and problem solving to help make it better. And I also think it's important to know, and is that I think that the way that I do something isn't necessarily going to be the way that my client will. So it's about finding a way that works for them. We all have the end result. We want them to be happy, healthy, independent students, but the way in which we get there is going to look different for everyone. So it's really hard not to project our own methods into what they're doing. You can use it as a starting point. And I personally know that when it comes to like finances for me, I need to do it in a certain kind of way, whereas my husband wants to do it in a different kind of way, and it doesn't work. But if he wants me to do certain things, it's got to be in a way that's going to work for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other last questions while we have Nicole and Peggy on the line before we jump off?
Just real quick, what really has worked within our family, we have 2 neurodiverse kids living in this house, both 16, is doing regular check-ins. And my invitation to you as teachers is doing a check-in and allowing people to feel the way that they are feeling and not trying to change it. It's a skill to really sit back and allow someone to check in with a feeling and just hold that space. So that's just a recommendation.
No, I actually agree with that, because the kids' feelings are their feelings, whether or not I'm not saying it's not valid, but whether or not they're having a strong feeling about something that happened, it is what they're feeling. So it's trying to figure out and problem solve through that.
Mm-hmm.
And accepting that they think differently.
100%.
My autistic son is one way, and my partner's son is ADHD, and he's another way. And the way they think, it is distinctly different.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And it's showing, but this is where I think perspective taking comes in. Just say, I don't know your kids' names, but Jack sees it this way, and Steven sees it this way, and that's okay that you both see it different. It's like both their reality, but just like explaining and being cognizant of the fact that they're gonna see it differently. and to respect the other person's difference.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
That's great. Great point.
Anything else?
Anything else? Last question. Here we go. Last question. Okay. If
Well,
there are no,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, if there are no questions, I will be sure to send out the recording with Peggy and Nicole's direct emails. So if you don't get a chance to fill out that PDF link, you have their contact in the recording. And I just thank everybody for their time this morning. Thank you all for showing up and being great. Have a great rest of the week. And again, thank you.
Thank you,
Are
everyone.
sending PDF to everyone?
Of this, no. So go in this link that Andy sent to you, this one. You can even screenshot this, and if you go sign in there, then we will have a list of everyone that wants some PDFs on what this was all about and some helpful tips and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all again for your participation. Appreciate it. And thank you, Peggy, Nicole. This was great.
You're so
Thanks
welcome.
to Fusion. We love the one-on-one Fusion setting, and it's been great working with you guys.
No, it's been fun.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer.
I actually did have a quick question, if you don't mind. I know you're logging off. It still had to do with the boundaries. So what I've noticed, I'm talking more from a parent than as a professional at this point in time, but that with the flexible thinking, how that relates to accountability. Because what I've noticed is there seems to be a lot of deflection and kind of excuse making on things. And so the fine line between, being flexible, providing choices, but also keeping kids accountable. So I've seen that in my practice and I see it in my personal life with my kids.
Right. Peggy, you want to?
Yeah.
I mean,
so in terms of, are you saying deflecting responsibility when it makes them
So
feel
I know we were headed off, but that was my original question that I put in the chat, and I was trying to unmute, and I was having a problem. But
sorry, Jennifer.
Yeah. So just my real quick question was I'm just curious, because you want to provide obviously flexible, like provide options and teach flexibility to certain situations, but often you'll get the kind of backhanded response of, well, you were flexible in this situation. How come I can't be flexible myself in this situation? So for example, let's say you say, I'm coming to pick you up at 5:30 and your child's not there at 5:30. I have the child that will be sarcastic and say, well, you wanted me to be flexible at this point in time. You need to be flexible now.
Wow. That's where I think the clear and fuzzy come into play, which we use a lot. Nicole, step in anytime you want, but clearly, that's a clear boundary. We had an agreement. If there's any issue, that's where the flexibility comes in. What are some things you can do to let me know out of courtesy? So those were the basic manners. You don't stand someone up, you don't be late, things like that. So we work a lot on basic social rules, and within that, you can be flexible. Yeah, that's a hard one.
I also think that as the parents, we get to call the shots. And I know, and did he by any chance call or text you saying, hey, I'm running late?
It's been kind of an ongoing thing where, I'm about accountability and maintaining, and saying what you're going to do and follow through with it.
Yep.
And so as a result, there's, he's 15. It's a dynamic that is becoming unhealthy, because when I try to set the boundaries, there's obviously a lot of pushback.
Okay, so I would
happening.
rather than try to set the boundary, and this is going to be really hard at first, but I would say, the bus is leaving at this time, so if you're here, great, I'll give you a ride. If not, I have to go back. I have other things
that's
to do.
where I've gotten. So of course, I'm getting a lot. I'm just bringing it up because this happened actually yesterday. It was funny because then I was told, you're mean, you're not nice.
I know.
you get upset too often. And so obviously I'm trying to not get upset, but at the same time, it's becoming a recurrent
Well, I will say
thing.
this. So I have twin daughters who are 21 and actually almost 22. And because of things that happened in high school and the way that I parented, I am still repairing relationships. I mean, everything is fine, but they don't understand that how all of a sudden I learned to put down boundaries and I did it. So my advice to any parent is to set the boundaries now, because trying to be complacent and I mean, I'm not pointing any fingers. I did the same thing. I wanted to make my children happy. Sometimes it was easier for me to take care of things because it got done faster and more efficiently, but we got to let them fall and we got to let them learn that there are consequences to your actions. And that's not about flexible thinking. That's a consequence to your action. I have a life too. I have to be at certain places too. If you want a ride from me, you have it at this time. Otherwise, find your own ride.
And that's pretty much the path that I've taken. But I always find it helpful to have the additional support. So I was putting it out there, and the flexible thinking, I was,
right.
The reason I was asking is I wanted some clarity on that, because I felt, I was like, okay, this is a little bit new concept. Maybe I'm not going the right way, but in sense, I'm being reassured that I need to just stay on my same path.
Stay on your same path and just know that they will always push the boundaries and they'll keep going as far as you're going to let them. So if you let them take an inch every so often, you will have just come out a ton. So it's holding the boundaries and knowing what your child should be capable of and responsible for at each step of the way. And sticking to it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your extra time.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I was trying to find a way to ask the question. And Andy, thank you.
There's another, there was too much to add into that, but our therapist actually worked on this with, it's well known, it's called collaborative problem solving. If you're finding you might be familiar with it already, but it's where you kind of step outside of the power, because we're going through major power struggles. It's like, okay, here's the issue. I notice that you get upset when when I demand that you're on time. What can we do about it? And so rather than, so you come at the problem together and have them generate solutions.
Sure.
It can be less volatile that way.
Yes, I'm quite a negotiator and highly emotionally intelligent kid. And it's a bit challenging because he certainly has many solutions.
Yeah.
And so, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate also the insight from, a professional standpoint too. And Andy, thank you for sending out the email and including me as well.
Of course, of course.
All right. I know you guys don't have much time. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I made Peggy the host. I do have to jump off, but I made Peggy the host in case there's other questions and you want to stick on, or we can follow up.
Us or them? Us.
Either.
I could go about 10 more minutes if people wanted that.
Needed.
I don't know about you, Peggy. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yeah, if they're not any other questions. Peggy, Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
It was great.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch with the recording. I'm going to stop the recording, or Peggy. Oh no, I can do it still.
You're still on this, yeah.
Yeah, but okay. I'll send out the recording by the end of the day. I have a few more meetings, so I won't get till later. But then I'll also send out your guys' contact for everyone, and then just be in touch to say thank you again.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.